So yeah, aloha, welcome to the Waimea webinar. Yeah, I'm Christopher. And so I'll be talking today about pruning and sharing my knowledge. So this is an introduction. And I wouldn't say that after watching this, you'd be able to prune that 80-foot mango next to your house. I would leave that to the experienced professionals. But yeah, for your basic backyard stuff, this should be, be able to get you going. If you have any questions during this, if you'd like more detail or more clarity on anything, just please ask away. Feel free. Okay, so yeah, this is the introduction. So let's go to the basics. What is pruning? Why to prune? And when do you do it? Pruning would be basically cutting trees, bushes, anything woody. It could be herbs even, but I'll focus more on woody things. And pruning it for beauty, for safety, for function, for all sorts of reasons, for health of the tree. And there's a vast variety of reasons to prune. In the tropics, the timing of pruning, it's not such a big issue as in a seasonal temperate climate. In the temperate climate, I would say pruning would be done more towards the end of the growing season. So before winter, just like end of fall or very early spring before things start growing. So basically in the dormant period is when you want to prune a tree. In the tropics, we do have species that go dormant, but a lot of them, most species don't. So, and even the dormant ones, the ones that go dormant, you could probably still get away with pruning them any time of year. Just something to think about. Yeah, let's go on to the next one. So to start out, let's just go over some terms. We have old growth, new growth. What is a bud? What's the collar of a tree? Leader and a crotch. Yes, even plants have crotches, and water sprouts and basal suckers. So if we go our first slide, we'll show old growth, distinction between old growth and new growth. The old growth you can tell by the woodiness basically, and the new growth is, you can see it's got that green shoot in the forefront. The bark isn't quite woody, and this is a recently sprouted branch, and it just hasn't. So the difference is in the quality of the bark. The newer bark, it just doesn't have that layer of dead cells on it. It's fresh living stuff, and the old growth, it's basically a protective layer of dead cells. Okay. You can see here when you're pruning something woody or anything, typically the response of the plant is going to be, you're going to get growth from below that cut. So it could be as simple as just one little shoot replaces the branch that you cut, or you could get all kinds of sprouts below it. And this is what we're looking at. The buds are what sprout. So the lower bud there, those are axillary buds. They're growing in the axils of the leaf. That's like the little crotch of the leaf. Oh, go back. And so at the tip, you have the apical bud. And that apical bud is very important for any plants. So that is the site of auxin production. Auxin is a plant hormone. It regulates growth. And that in the tip is actually suppressing the growth of those lower buds below the tip. So if you remove that axis, the meristem, the tip, the apical bud, you're going to get that auxin production it's going to stop for a while. The tip won't produce it anymore. And so those lower buds will be released. They'll start to grow. So that's what the response of the plant is to pruning usually. So if you go next. All right, so thinking about what the collar, what is the collar of a branch? So where the branch meets the trunk. So you have various examples here. It's not so hard to see. It's difficult to see on some plants sometimes, but it's generally where you just how do I explain it? You can generally see like a little bump, like on that upper crotch and that upper axle. There's generally a little bump, a little bark, a branch bark ridge. They're calling it here. And you don't want to cut into that. If you cut into that, you're kind of cutting into the vascular system of the main branch or into the trunk, and it's harder for the plant to heal. So anytime you're cutting, you want to cut above. You don't want to cut into the collar. You got to cut a little bit outside it. At the same time, you don't want to cut too far away from the main trunk, because something you can show the next slide. Here's an example. On the right side, you have a well-executed cut, and this is a large tree branch, but it works same principle for smaller diameters. On the right, you can see how it was short little nub that was left close enough to the trunk that the tree is able to heal itself and close that wound over time. And you want it to be able to close over as soon as possible, because of course an open wound on a plant it's the same as for us. If we get a cut in our skin, it can lead to an infection. It's just an invitation for fungus or bacteria to get into the wood. So we want the tree to heal itself. And if you cut too far out, like on the left example, this is a monkey pod, by the way, you can see what happens. It simply can't close that wound, and you end up with a rotten piece of wood just lingering there, and it's just the open avenue to infection. So next term we're looking at the leader. So the leader is it's a term to talk about the main trunk. It's going to have a main vertical growth. So that's that apical meristem that just wants to grow straight up. Yeah, that's fine. Next term is crotch. And so yeah, so again, it's like an axle. It's where the branch meets the trunk. And so you can have good crotches and you can have bad crotches. Let's go back to the last one. Can we go back, Anissa? To the good crotches? So yeah, so we got what's the difference between a good crotch and a bad crotch? So on the right here, we have a okari nut, and that has a kind of a quintessentially good crotch. Those angles where the branch meets the trunk, they're like right angles almost. And that's just the habit of this particular species, but it's a really good example of showing how like that would be the strongest connection of a branch to a trunk that you could get. It's just when you think about the internal fibers of the tree and how the plant is growing, yeah, those fibers, it's just a stronger connection when you have a more obtuse angle, when you have a wider angle between the branch and the trunk. And on the left, you can see those are obviously more angular crotches, but they're still good because, well, I don't know if you can't really see from the photo, but if you can imagine the collar of the branch, it's really sitting on the outside of the trunk. It's well defined, like just at the base of the branch, and then you have the collar and then the trunk. But if you go and look at something like a weak crotch, if you want to look at the next slide. yeah, so this is a breadfruit, and it's a good example of, you know, why you want to prune your trees early. Prune your plants early, because if you let it go too long, something like this can happen. So you see at the base, we got a double trunk, basically 2 sprouts are allowed to grow. And what should have happened is should have picked one and just cut the other one when it was still a small tree. But what you have here is there's no visible collar, obviously. You have a very, very acute angle in the crotch. And so now if you think about the grain of the wood between these two, yeah, you can go to the next one. The grain of the wood internally, it's not a right angle. It's not a very good structural design. So yeah, if you go to the next one, okay, so this is kind of intermediary between the two. You can see, yeah, you can see how that collar there is kind of cutting almost into the trunk, the main trunk, but it's not quite. This is a strong crotch, but it's kind of borderline. So yeah, so this is a coffee tree. Can you pause it a second? Can't pause? Oh, right. So that's a coffee, and I'm not worried about damaging it like that. It's a weed around here. But if we wait a second, I think we'll go back to the beginning. What I'm demonstrating is if you let something like that, such a acute angle, just keep growing, the wind on a larger tree, you know, it can exert a lot of force, twisting force. If you have a big windstorm or something like this, it's gonna torque that top of the tree. It's gonna torque the branches, and you'll end up getting something like that. So that's a weak crotch. It's you can see how the grain just hasn't picked a direction. It's just a very fine distinction between, is it going this way? Is it going this way? You know, it's be a lot harder for me to do that if the branch was coming out at a right angle. And another thing to point out, you see all those ants running around? Yeah, in this environment, in our climate, they love hanging out in those little tight spaces in the trees. And they'll often bring bugs. Sometimes I swear they like to hollow out little bits, and then they work out a little hole and they create a hollow inside there, creates infection. So anytime you can get rid of one of those branches on the weak crotch, then you know you can eliminate a whole bunch of problems. So the next term was water sprouts. Sometimes you call them suckers, and this is basically just a fast growth. Like if it's often a response to pruning. So if those branches were cut on the top of that limb at some point to let in light, then you know these little skinny guys, they kind of just go straight up for the sun. You often get a lot of them at the same time, and it can be very unsightly. And if you allow it to keep growing, it just become a kind of a big mess and a nightmare way down the branch. Could even get too weighty and the branch will break. So that's a good one to look out for. And then basil suckers, similar. Okay. So can we play that whole video, or is that what we just had? So I just wanted to point out the sawing technique for that. Not playing? I don't know. Oh well, we'll get back to it later. At any rate, so yeah, let's go over the tools that we're going to use. So pruning shears, they're snips, pruning shears, basic hand tools. And if you feel comfortable with like bigger things like chainsaws or whatever, then you know that's up to you. But I use just the pruning saws, something like this is often sufficient. This can even cut through a very large diameter trunk with little effort when you have a very good quality saw. Something like this, little hand saw, little pocket saw. Will also do the job for small things. And of course you have your loppers. And yeah, so the way these work, same as the hand pruners. It's got a hammer and a blade. So when you're working with something to consider when you're working with green, like new growth, not the old growth, but this hammer can often damage the bark and the new growth. So you want to be careful and prune lightly, light touch. Right, so something like this, a cut like this would be on something thin. You'd use one of these. And you don't want to get too close to the bud. If you recall, I was showing you the buds on the branch earlier. And the concept is to cut at an angle, and the top of that angle should be on the side of the bud. So here's an example of, on the right, it was cut a little too close to the trunk. That's like beyond the collar. It's on the other side of the collar. And on the left, if I, that's where it should have stopped. I cut it a little farther in just as an example, but on the left is where you want to go. And then if you're using the saw for a bigger branch, the first thing, there's 3 cuts to a saw. You don't just cut it straight through. Most people that don't have the experience, they'll start on the top and cut the limb from the top. But the first cut you want to make should actually be quite a bit away from the trunk. What you're trying to do is eliminate the weight of the branch before you cut close to the trunk. So that first cut is an undercut, and it was go 1/3 to 1/2 of the way into the trunk. You don't want to go further because then the weight of the branch it'll pinch the saw and it'll be hard to get out. So you go halfway in on the first undercut, and then the second cut, you can go a little bit above, or I often just go flush with the first cut, but above is just fine. And once you get down to meet the first cut, it'll break that branch off. It should just break off. And then the third one is again right next to the collar, just a little bit out. So that one you can start at the top and just one cut through. The reason we do that, if you look above the saw, there's a branch that's cut, and you can see that the bark is peeled off. That was done cutting just from the top first, and then the bark just came with it. It just peeled right off. But you see, if you do the undercut first, there's no possibility of ripping bark. So that's the really proper way to do that. Right, okay, so for step by step, the first thing you want to do when you're thinking about pruning a plant, you want to not touch it. You want to stand back and look at it from a good distance, get the whole gestalt of the thing, and just visualize the shape, visualize the final product that you want, and look at it. Just look for health issues. Yeah, you got to see your product in the thing in front of you. See the final product already. The second thing you do before you do anything, this is easy, because you got to decide what branches am I going to cut. It can be daunting for sure. You think like, oh, I'm going to cut healthy live branches. But the first thing you can do automatically right away is just take out anything that's dead or has like a disease on it that you can't cure. So yeah, it's often easy to identify the dead stuff. Like this, the bark on the last picture, the bark was obviously peeling off. and the bark is brown. But if you can't tell, sometimes it's hard to tell. You can scrape back. I would use my thumbnail, but I don't have thumbs. You don't usually want to make such a big damage to the bark when you're trying to save the limb, but this is just for demonstration purposes. You can see in the fresh stuff on those first cuts I did right there, the wood is, you have live sap in there. The wood is fresh looking, maybe a bit greenish. You should be able to see some green actually right under the bark. And then when I get to the dead part, you can see under the bark, it's obviously dead. So that's how you would know if you couldn't tell if something's dead or not. So here I'm just removing dead branches from this crown flower. And already just doing that, it opens up, it's surprising. I mean, you'd think all just a bunch of little thin dead branches are not doing much, but it actually blocks a lot of light. And it's surprising how much you can open up just by removing the deads. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. That's one really big reason to prune, is to open up the canopy from the middle and bring light into the center of the plant. It's definitely a way to keep your tree happy and healthy and short at the same time. If you want to prune a tree to keep it like small and kind of contained, you can make a tree have any shape you want, basically. Just a matter of like why or how. But if you want to keep it small and contained, one trick is that you would go in and prune out some of the center so that you can let light come in down to the lower branches and let the sun hit those lower branches that are normally shaded, and they'll sprout hopefully some new branches, and then you can play with the structure after that. So the next step, easy, no brainer, is look for anything that's rubbing or crossing. So this Puakeni had one big branch that was really crossing the other one. I don't think we have a close-up of it, but when you have that cross, when the branches are actually touching, the wind is moving them, they're rubbing together, and you get the friction and you get a wound usually. You'll see like the bark will be really smooth, but if it happens continuously over time, it's just gonna eventually potentially make a wound, and it's never going to heal because it's always moving and the plant just can't heal that. So you always want to cut out. Now, see, this is a brand. It looks like it's almost fused, but it's not. They're just trying to heal that wound where they're touching. Yeah, so that's what we were cutting out. And there you can see exactly what it looked like inside. That's the branch that was removed just there. And yeah, that's basically, it's an avenue for infection. So at this point, you've taken out your dead material, you've taken out the crossing branches. And again, you want to stand back. That's the next step. Just stand back and look at what you got. It's very important point is that you can't put branches back. You can always take more off, but you can't put them back. So you stand back, assess again, and then the next step would be to look for the wrong branches, I guess that's the way to say it. So anything that's like any branches that are sticking out too far, you can prune them back to get a nice kind of crown. You want to look for balance. So like I said, no, if a branch is just like obviously taking off and getting too long or too tall, you can trim it back. And yeah, you just want to look for overall aesthetics at that point. So yeah, one thing to consider, again, has to do with the plant hormones. When you cut the tip of something, it's going to start resprouting. So the more you cut, the more new growth you're going to get, and it depends on the species. But you want to consider that. You might be creating just more work for yourself if you do it. And if you're pruning something that's it's something you have for the flowers or for the fruit, you have to consider, does it flower on the old wood, or does it flower on the new wood? Does it flower on woody branches or at the tips of the branches? So you got to be aware, if you're cutting off the old or cutting off the new growth, are you actually not going to have flowers for that year? Or in some species, it actually helps you get more flowers. So it's something you have to research to know species by species, case by case. Right. Okay. So there's a good rule of thumb, the 2/3 new growth. You don't want to cut too much of the old. Like I said, if you see any problems with the tree, you have to learn to identify the problems and then get them early, because you don't want something to get too overgrown. If you have a large tree and you have a bad crotch in the large tree, it's actually can be really damaging to cut it at that point. So you want to get it before you actually have the problem. Yeah, so when you finish, you'll have a basic framework, mix of old, semi-young, and young material. Yeah. All right, so let's just look at here's a diagram with several problems. Let's see how many problems we can identify on this one. Let's look at the top. Yeah, the first thing we would look at is that there's the leader, that's the tip growth. There's actually, it splits into two and they're equal. You don't have like a strong leader. So you have like a double leader, that's called. And on the top of that, it's also a weak crotch because it's got that acute angle. So what you would do is you'd select one and take the other one out. Yeah, you can, yeah, the red is what you'd take out. So next thing you could look at is see the tallest point on that tree is actually from something, the sucker, right? That's a water shoot. So there's several on that one branch. You would take those all out. And then we have also some drooping branches on the right side. Those aren't doing anything. They don't look good. So you prune it back to the next good crotch. See, down at the base of the tree, we have, that's a little difficult. You could get this when it's a potted plant, maybe when you're taking it out of the pot and planting it in the ground. This is like a spiral root. This happens when a plant is grown in a pot and it becomes root bound, and it just kind of follows the curve of the pot because it has nowhere else to go. So what happens is, as that root, it's encircling the base of the tree, as it grows, it'll be fine for a few years, but as that root thickens and increases in diameter, it's actually going to strangle the trunk and can cut off the vascular system of the trunk. So as the tree gets older, it's actually going to just slowly kill the tree, and there's nothing that can fix it. So yeah, so if you see something like that, you definitely want to prune that off. And yeah, and then there's a basal sucker there coming out of the root on the left side. So you don't need, unless you want two trees growing really close to each other, you could mow that or prune it, or you'll probably want to keep sprouting, but just keep cutting it back until it decides to die. And then the last one, the big one I was talking about, is the weak crotch on the left side. So that lowest branch on the left, it's a bad angle, and it also has some crossing branches with the one above it. So all good reasons to remove it. And so the final product would look something like that. So you see all you go to the next one, you compare. Yeah. So if you leave a tree to its own devices, what happens is the trees will self-prune. They'll prune themselves. When lower branches get shaded out, they'll just they'll senesce. The tree will let them die off, and they'll just drop and they'll fall, and you'll get a natural look to the tree. It'll be self-pruned, but it's not always in the tree's best interest. It's not designed per se. A human being can look at that and see the problems that it might create and fix them before that happens. So there's the tree. If you leave it unpruned, that's my imagination, what it might look like. So you can see on the left that weak crotch. Eventually there was a wind event, and it just split the tree down the middle. And it's still alive. It's still trying to grow, but it doesn't look great. And that water shoot that was on the right side, it's actually taken over and become the main branch, the main trunk. And that double leader there got taken over, but it's still a bad crotch. It's going to be a problem later. Yeah, and that's if you prune it, you get something that's nice and balanced, gets strong, it doesn't have any structural problems. And yeah, that would be the goal. I don't know, I've been talking for like half an hour, I think. So do you want to have some questions? If anybody has questions, I'll give them a couple seconds to ask.
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, I have a fig tree, a brown turkey fig tree that's about a little bit taller than me. And I don't want it to go taller than me because I want to be able to just pull down the branches and harvest them. So I cut off the apical, like you said, and then there are side branches that grow out. They are pretty long and spindly and flexible. I don't know if you call them suckers, but how do I trim the side branches to make them, to contain them? What would you suggest that I trim?
Well, so
trim them shorter or trim off the suckers that grow up vertically from the side branches?
I would definitely, yeah, if you see suckers, that would be the first thing to definitely address. They're not going to help the tree in the future. I'm sorry, we have the air conditioner on. I missed a little bit of your question, but I think you said you have the tree's just as tall as yourself, and
yeah,
you have some lower branches or that are just kind of
I have
going
a lot
out
of
too far. They're reaching out too far.
Yeah.
So what you can do is, think about just the general shape that you like. And do you know what kind of tree it is?
It is a fig tree.
A fig. Okay. Yeah, a fig you can prune to basically any shape you want at all.
Okay.
They're very easy. So if you want just like a natural look, I would just say go for just kind of a ball or a cone shape. So the lowest branches, they should be just a little bit longer than the ones above it, just so that they're able to get a little bit of sun. Yeah.
The thing about them is the crotch, especially those on the lower branches, are not growing like straight out 90 degrees or an angle. It's loping down and then going up. Do you know what I mean? It's like a curve. It curves down and then up at the crotch.
Oh yeah.
So I'm thinking that happens because first it grows down, and then as it grows, it starts to reach up towards the sky.
So is this an edible fig or is that?
Yeah, edible fig.
Oh yeah, they typically do that. That's a common.
Oh really?
Thing to do. Yeah. So what I was saying earlier, you could, if you want to kind of selectively look and see if you can take some branches out of the middle and let some light in down to the bottom. That weird kind of curving branch, you could cut it back kind of closer to the trunk and let it resprout. It won't resprout too well if it doesn't have light. So you would want to cut some stuff above it a little bit to allow light in, and then you could get a better shape for that branch. You could kind of coax it
Okay.
into growing into a better direction. But
Okay.
yeah, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I would just cut that lower one basically where it's starting to curve down,
Mm.
and it'll probably sprout right there, right below where you cut it. And then you want to pick one or two of those sprouts to grow, but it'll put out 3 or 4 if any of them are pointing downwards. So you cut it here and then you get like sprouts growing.
Yeah, that's right.
You
Right.
cut the ones that are growing downwards and let the ones that are growing up.
Okay, got you.
Yeah. Hope that works.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. All right. So yeah, I think that concludes this month's webinar. Oh, checking.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everybody for checking in with us. That was fun.